Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Good morning to you. It's 3 minutes after 9 on Tuesday, May the 14th. We are just days away from elections that many people think should never have been held in the first place. Indeed, if it had been successfully prosecuted, they wouldn't have been. And at more than £100 million. But there's an extraordinary story seems to be developing around these elections, which is a party that is in its infancy, only baby steps. If you look at the polls, and yes, one has to look at polls with health warnings at all times, well, it seems to be batting all the others out of the park. I speak, of course, of the Brexit Party, and I know from conversations that I've had about various matters, there are many of you who are supporters, and there are many of you who have concerns over its leader, Nigel Farage. He's here taking your calls. First one from me. Nigel, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming on. I've got to ask you about that interview on Sunday with Andrew Marr. Some commentators said, and indeed on this programme said, it will just secure your support. You were absolutely, people will see that, and they will see that you, Nigel Farage, reacted in some way. Others would say you were found wanting when you were put under the searchlight of certain questions.
Well,
Nigel
I've been
Farage.
asked all those questions 1,000 times. And many of the comments, or alleged comments, that Mr Marr put to me are things I said over a decade ago and were quoted to me out of context. And quite how the BBC researcher doesn't know that I advocated a no deal during the referendum. In fact, I did it
June the 8th, 2016. I've got the date.
Yeah, the head-to-head debate with David Cameron. So, factually wrong. But here's the point. The week before, I'd sat in this very chair with Ian Dale sitting where you're sitting.
Yep.
And Ian had asked me a whole series of questions about the Brexit Party, its constitution, what democracy there was within the party, how we could have left-wing figures and right-wing figures working together. Did that mean splits were inevitable? What use would Brexit Party MEPs be? He was asking me questions about the birth of this new party a month in, and what potential problems and pitfalls there might be. All legitimate, sensible stuff. LBC is a commercial station. People can listen to this or not listen to this. It's entirely up to them. We are all taxed.
Yep.
And it is a tax, effectively, isn't it? 150 quid to support the BBC every year.
Paid it 2 weeks ago, it says.
You know, I did, and I'm beginning to regret it, actually. But we'll come to that, perhaps. Mustn't be too naughty. But here's the point. There's a brand new political movement that in, as I say, a month goes from not existing to topping the polls in a national election. And our public service broadcaster, right, who we all pay this money to, had not had anybody from the Brexit Party on a major programme until last Thursday when I did Question Time. And
I want to ask you about that, Nigel. You write in the Daily Telegraph today, Nigel Farage, and you say, I was on Question Time last Thursday, but I'm quoting, I had to fight like crazy to secure my seat on the panel. Why so?
Wasn't confirmed till Wednesday that I'd be on, because they wanted to have a woman.
Right.
For gender balance. I said, well, fine. We've got some great women. We can give you Anne Widdecombe or Claire Fox. We've got some wonderful women standing for us. But actually, do you know what? I'm the founder of this. I invented this thing. I've developed this thing. I'm leading this thing. Don't I deserve a chance to present to the country what it's for? So I had to battle like crazy because the BBC now have to gender balance everything. And I'm all for equal opportunities, but it did strike me as being bizarre. So I go on, Marr, and you know, we are fighting this election as the Brexit Party. Our theme is democracy, right? We think that democracy is breaking down. We've been betrayed by Parliament, and it's time for us to stand up and fight back. Right or wrong, that is what we're standing on. I didn't get a single question on that. What I got questions on were alleged comments I'd made about Vladimir Putin. He didn't want to talk about the election in any way at all. It was an out-and-out ad hominem attack. And I did not go on there, you know, with the intention of having a row with the interviewer.
What happened at the end? You know how normally you say, thank you very much, have a good Sunday, I'm out of here. Did it end in a pleasant tone with Mr Marr?
No.
What did you say?
Well, I mean, sometimes in the heat of the moment we say things, Nick, you know. Something like, I shan't be coming back here again.
How did he respond?
He didn't bother, you know.
Would you go back? If Brexit is the success that the polls suggest.
Do we need the BBC anymore?
You tell me.
I'm not sure. I mean, you know, it used to be absolutely. I mean, the Brexit Party has managed to get to the top of the polls without the BBC having us either on main programmes or, more significantly, you may have seen, I've been going around the country day after 6 days a week. I'm out around the country doing events, street walkabouts, rallies at which thousands of people have been turning up. I don't see any BBC cameras there.
But lastly, before we go to the calls, Alistair, don't go, you will be the first caller. To those who say this is part of being held to account, Nigel Farage, this is what you need to answer questions about your views on gun control.
I can give you my school report from 1982, and you can ask me questions about that if you want to. I mean, this was ludicrous. There was nothing in this interview that had anything to do with a national set of elections that are happening next Thursday. I thought the whole thing was a disgrace. And how someone like that is paid $400,000 a year to ask me questions like that.
Isn't that a bit personal, mentioning his salary?
What, you're paying for it, I'm paying for it, we're all paying for it. Look, as I said, this is not a commercial organisation, it's a public service broadcaster that we all pay money to. We deserve better. Alistair's
in Stirling. Alistair, you're on the radio. Good morning. Your question to Nigel Farage.
Good morning. I would like to know who is funding the Brexit Party.
Well, that's the remarkable story, Alistair, and I have to say this. I think of all the things we've done, this is our proudest achievement. We are approaching 100,000 registered supporters in 4.5 weeks, all of whom, Alistair, paid £25 through our website on PayPal to become registered supporters. We've also got coming through the door sacks of mail. I mean, sacks of mail. So, Alistair, we funded over 90% of this through £25 donations, and I don't think anybody in British politics has ever managed to do this before.
Response from you, Alistair?
Just surprised.
Well, don't be surprised, Alistair, because I tell you what, there are a lot of people out there who are really upset that Brexit's not been delivered.
Who are the prominent supporters financially?
Well, there's one person who's given a big amount of money who's named himself. Didn't need to, because this all gets registered with the Electoral Commission, and after the election they tell you who's given what. But Jeremy Hosking has been a big Conservative donor, and he's given 2 big donations to the party.
And are there other people who've given similar amounts of money?
No, but there are people who I think might do in the next few days. What I'm seeing, Nick, are people who have been lifelong Conservative donors saying, well, what's the point of the Conservative Party anymore?
Who are we talking about?
Well, that wouldn't be fair because they haven't given us money yet, and they may not. But
those who have given money, why can't we, large sums of money? Why can't we know their identity?
Well, you do. His name's Jeremy Hosking.
Right, but then so there's nothing else. There's not tens of thousands or
no. But I think there may well be, and we are now actively in conversation.
Presumably, this has to be made public at some point after the European elections.
Of course, but isn't it funny? Nobody else gets asked this question. I mean, the truth of it is, politics generally, the trade unions fund the labour movement. All right, simple as that. That's where the vast majority of their income comes from. The Conservatives are funded by a lot of very, very wealthy individual backers, and nothing wrong with any of that. What I'm telling you here is there's a remarkable story here of grassroots funding of a political movement.
But can you be a supporter without paying £25?
Not a registered supporter. And if you're a registered supporter, you get
So you can't be, you can be a member of the Conservative Party, or you can be a member of the Liberal Democrats. You can't be a member of Brexit, can you? Unless you give money.
You cannot be a registered supporter unless you give £25. Yes, that's right.
Is that fair?
It's working.
Is it fair?
It's perfectly reasonable, isn't it? What's wrong with it? I mean, look, the Labour Party, of course, signed up loads of people for £3 a pop. We're not doing that. We're saying, look, if you want to be part of this, you want to be part of the club, we need a reasonable contribution, and people are responding in the most astonishing way.
You must have millions, if I've got my sums right. Millions, then.
As Diane Abbott found out, you're very good at sums.
So you've got a good fighting fund.
We've raised a lot of money, and let's say the vast majority of it through grassroots donations.
Let's get to more grassroots calls. Thanks for Alistair for getting us started. Carol in Twickenham. Carol, you're through to Nigel Farage. Go ahead.
Oh, good morning, Nick, and good morning, Mr. Farage. What I'd like to ask you is, you say you want to be an MP, but an MP needs policies, and you seem to have one, Brexit.
Well, Carol, we are fighting next Thursday a national election in this country. It is a European election, and we're fighting it on European issues, and in particular, I'm fighting it, the Brexit Party's fighting it on the issues of democracy and trust. So I'm not going to talk about other domestic issues because that would cloud what I think, and you may disagree, but I actually think, Carol, we are facing one of the most fundamental questions for centuries in this country. Are we a democratic nation or not?
Carol?
Well, what I'd like to say to you, Mr. Farage, is how you seem to pop up all over the place when there is a crisis in this country, and then here we are seeing you starting this party with the backing of so-called quite wealthy people.
No, £25
And you
a pop,
have said-
individual people,
Can I
100,000 of them,
just
Carol.
Wait 1 second, please.
Carol, make your
I
point.
have read that these people are coming up with cash to support you. You're not giving out names, but there are certain names that are popping up all over the place. And also, one other thing I'd like to ask you, Mr. Farage.
Well, I'll tell you what, Carol, let's deal with the first one. You
I'll
clearly
come back
aren't-
to you, Carol.
You
Nigel
clearly aren't very
Farage.
good at listening, Carol, because I've made it clear, and I'm going to say it one more time. We are approaching 100,000 people who've paid £25 to become registered supporters, and that is where over 90% of our funding to date has come from. What's wrong with that, Carol?
It's absolutely outrageous.
Oh, really?
Because let me tell you something now, Mr.
What?
Farage.
No, please tell me
You
why
know
it's outrageous.
darn
I'm
well
fascinated.
You can't do it without these people. Because in Featherstone in Yorkshire, that's where you had your rally, is that correct?
I had one there yesterday and one in Huddersfield in the evening.
People, okay, 70% people voted to leave the EU.
So what's your point there,
And
Carol?
you had
I've
your
got to move.
rally up there.
Yeah.
I would say to you, Mr. Farage, why don't you have your rally in Parliament Square and see what the mood is
We
like
did, and
there?
we had 60,000 people there on the 29th of March.
What happens if
Carol.
you go to Richmond, Nigel Farage?
Well, I'm very happy to go to Richmond, and in fact, we have been campaigning.
This is
all
Richmond,
over.
sorry, by the way.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
But the reason I was where I was yesterday is because that particular constituency, it's the Pontefract constituency, was, quite rightly as Carol says, got something right, 70% leave. And their Member of Parliament is a very high-profile person called Yvette Cooper, who said in the general election she'd respect the will of the people, boasted that she'd voted for Article 50, and has spent the last 2 years trying to stop Brexit from happening. And that, to me, sums up what is going wrong in this country. Now, it's very interesting because both Labour and Conservative MPs and vast sections of mainstream media don't think there's any problem at all with the can being kicked down the road repeatedly on Brexit. One of the things I learnt sitting in that chair doing a show for LBC is you get outside the central London boroughs and there's huge anger in this country, and it's not just coming from Leave voters, a lot of it's coming from Remain voters as well.
And what are they angry about?
Democracy. If we don't honour the will of the people, what kind of country are we? What does the rest of the
But
world
no
think
Remain
of us?
voter's going to vote for Brexit Party.
Oh, they will.
The Remain
Yeah,
vote.
there will be Remain voters who will vote for the Brexit. Indeed, we've even got a candidate standing for us in Eastern England who voted Remain in the referendum. Nick, for us to be a credible nation, the bedrock upon which it's founded is our democratic system, because that's the bond of trust that needs to exist between people and those that govern them. And that at the moment is fundamentally breaking down.
Carol, thank you for your call. We must move on. Carol, thank you. Mark in Sunbury-on-Thames. Mark, you're on the radio. What do you want to ask?
Good morning, Nigel.
Morning.
While I applaud the success of your party in the past few weeks, I'm a bit concerned to find out that people that pay their £25 to become members don't actually have any votes in the future and the say of the party.
Ooh.
And, of course, they don't have a say in choosing a leader, which is unlike any other political party in the country. Isn't that a bit dictatorial?
Mark, you are going to be amazed by what I'm going to tell you now. This is going to be the most open political party you've ever seen in Britain. We are getting rid of those delegated layers that political parties have, like national executive committees, where everything tends to get lost and tied up. What I'm going to do, Mark, and we've discussed this with the board, is we are going to directly liaise and have votes amongst our registered supporters to shape policy and shape our future direction. I want this to be a really, really engaged group of people. As far as
They'll vote via email, presumably. Will
Absolutely.
It? Yeah, not
Absolutely.
rallies every day.
No, it'll be an online platform,
Yeah, okay.
and we are going to consult them, and we will produce policy on the basis of what our supporters think. And that, I think, is quite a radical departure.
How long will a leader serve? How would leaders be changed?
Well, Nick, remember this. This was set up effectively like a company, as opposed to a political party. We had no time because suddenly, it was becoming clear that a European election was being set up. So we have a limited company, we have a board of directors.
So the board can move the chief executive effectively, i.e. you.
And this will evolve over time. But we set this up very, very quickly so that we could make decisions, and we've made good ones.
But you say that, quote some of your words, it's going to be the most open political party.
Yeah.
But you still won't share with me the big name donors.
You've had it already once, Jeremy Hoskin.
So no one else in the £20,000 and £30,000.
Oh, there's one or two in that range, yes, of course. Yeah, the ordinary citizens, yeah.
And
all of it, and by the way, all of that's gone to the Electoral Commission.
I'm sure. But it was the gentleman himself who made his name public. You didn't give it. Why so? What? There is a concern as to who might be giving the money.
As long as you're asking Vince Cable the same question, and as long as you're asking the Conservatives the same, and of course you'll get no answers from them either. If I was to give you a name of somebody who'd given, not a massive cheque, but one over £7,500,
right,
you'd have 150 media smashing his front door down. It doesn't work.
All right, okay. But response from you, Mark?
Well, Nigel, yes, I think that's good. I'm glad to hear what you've said. But my other concern is, should you now not be coming up with some form of ideas for a future manifesto? Because let's hope, God willing, that Brexit will be on its way by October.
Mark, the word manifesto, I'm never going to use it, ever. I have a sort
what
of
are you going to use instead?
I have a word association with manifesto, and that's lie, because that's all we've had from these other two parties, election after election, making manifesto pledges, Mark, that they don't even believe at the time, let alone intend to carry out later. So we'll have a policy platform, and Mark, I can tell you, behind the scenes, there is a lot of work going on as we speak.
But what will you call it? A principle, a declaration of trust, a Gettysburg Address?
A contract with the people.
So it won't be a manifesto, it'll be a contract with the people. Mark, thank you. Jake in Derby. Jake, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My question to Farage is that you talk about lie. On that token, why did you use immigration as a tool to deceive the people into voting Brexit?
Well, it didn't deceive anybody, Mark. As you may or may not remember, immigration was the absolute number one issue in this country in terms of the political conversation. It had been for a long time, and of course across the rest of Europe too. It has completely reshaped politics in Italy and elsewhere. Years go by, things change. The issue right now, Mark, I would put this to you. The burning issue right now is this fundamental question of democracy. Is the will of the British people going to be respected? And that's what I'm campaigning on.
Quick response from you, Jay.
You use immigration to whip up a frenzy within the people. I remember you using figures like 4 to 5 million people can come to this country. And also using things like we're flooded and that kind of thing.
I think you're referring to that.
Mark, excuse me. Let me finish my point, and you can make yours. You used the prejudice and fears of the ordinary working people on the premise of a lie, a grand lie, to say that if we didn't break Brexit, we wouldn't.
Mark, we have open borders.
His name's Jake.
Quite clearly that we can take control of our borders.
Jake, you're not going, but Nigel Farage, of course, you were criticised for that poster, though. You remember the poster, Mr. Farage?
The photograph, the truth. And it has radically transformed European politics. Here's the point. As members of the European Union, we all have European passports. We have a total open door to the whole of Europe. I think that's wrong, irresponsible. I think we have to have an immigration policy based on skills that does not discriminate against the rest of the world.
You don't regret that poster now?
Do you know what? It was, of its moment, absolutely right. Mrs. Merkel made a huge, huge error in saying anyone that wants to come can come.
Breaking point, and you're there, and there's EU, can I use the word a flood of migrants? I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word anymore.
The EU has failed us all,
that
is
was
what it said.
The next line.
And of course that was right, and it's completely transformed European politics.
And has it got worse?
No, actually, the flow of people coming in across the Mediterranean, partly because of deals done with Turkey, is much, much lower. It's not the number one issue anymore.
But would we take control of our borders? Because that was the purpose of that poster.
Of course, and that's what we absolutely must do.
But not with this deal.
Oh, no, I mean, with Mrs May's deal, we won't take control of anything, in my opinion.
Quick response from you, Jake. I did say I would let you back in. Jake?
Yeah, I think it's a bit disingenuous for Mr Farage to sit there, arrogant like he does, to say that immigration was not the number. Immigration did not have an effect on this. You can smoke all you like, but the fact doesn't matter.
No, he's not. That was me talking. Please don't think if so. I didn't mean to smirk if that came across in my tone. I was simply saying all right because I have to move on. Jake, thank you. I mean, there is this. You said at the end of last month, Mr. Farage, speaking to the Young Americans Foundation, I could take you to a town called Oldham in the north of England, where literally on one side of the street everyone is white and on the other side everyone is black. The twain never actually meet. There is no assimilation. Whole streets in Oldham of people who've lived in my country for 30 years don't speak a word of the English language. Is that not preying on the fears, Jake?
It's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, I'm making an argument here for integration. I'm making an argument here that if you have divided cities, it's bad news at every level. And the person that first put me onto this was the late Sir Charles Wheeler, the veteran journalist, because after the riots in Oldham in 2001, Tony Blair asked him, go to Oldham, find out what's going on. And I talked to Charles Wheeler about this, and he said what a tragedy it was, that almost like Northern Ireland had been, where you had divided communities on religion, you had Asian areas and white areas in Oldham. And I'm sorry to say, say...
Did you say Asian areas or black areas? Because you say black, you mean...
Well, again, and we all get caught up in this terminology.
Right.
What's allowed one day is not allowed the next day. But they are Asian areas. Now, you can call that black or whatever you need to call it. But here's the point. Right. Even today in 2019, you've got one ward in Oldham that is 97% white and the next door ward that is 66%.
But how would you address that?
Well, I think that part of that is about having a responsible immigration policy, having numbers coming in.
But these folk are already here, of course, Mr. Farage.
Yeah, I know, and we've got a devil of a job to deal with the problem that already exists. I do not want to live in a country where we have people divided and separated out.
Let's go to other calls. Adam in Leeds. Adam, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning. Nigel, the original referendum, you stood for a deal. You kept saying that we were going to get a deal. And now you keep saying that we, as in the general public, voted for no deal. I don't remember that being on the original referendum. So surely you need to get a mandate for this. Why not have a second referendum, no deal, be clear with the people for a change, versus remain?
Nigel Farage.
Adam, here's the point. For 25 years, over 25 years, I have said that a simple free trade deal with the European Union is a very achievable thing. The problem is, our Prime Minister has never asked for it. But equally, Adam, I did say during that referendum that no deal is better than a bad deal, which is obviously true. I first used that on June the 8th when I did a debate on ITV against the Prime Minister. I used it all the way through the rest of the campaign. So no deal is better than a bad deal. That is absolutely true. And I now think, Adam, given where we are and the absolute horlicks of it that this government has made, the only way we can deliver the democratic will of the people is to leave on WTO terms. But here's the good bit. The good bit is we go to Geneva, we go to the WTO, we use Article 24 of their treaty, and we would have 2 years, Adam, 2 years of no tariffs and no quotas, and we could sort the whole thing out.
Quick response from you, Adam.
I'm sorry, Nigel, I just don't believe anything you say.
Right, okay, fine.
Every single time. No, let me finish, if you may. You change your tune every single time. You never said no deal is better than a bad
8th of June against David Cameron, the biggest televised debate of the whole campaign.
8th of June 2016, it is actually documented, Adam, but do go on with your point, and then I must move on. One final point from you, Adam.
You stood on a platform constantly saying Norway is a good deal, Switzerland is a good deal, we would get a better deal.
Yes.
But now you're changing your tune again to WTO. How can we believe anything you say when you change your mind every single time?
Adam, as I say, I said no deal is better than a bad deal all the way through the negotiations. We shouldn't be where we are, but we are, and we must deliver the democratic will of the people, and that is leaving on WTO terms.
The Brexit Party you founded, Nigel Farage, is a month and a couple of days old. What happens in the next 30 days of the Brexit Party's life, would you suggest?
Well, we'll see what happens next Thursday, obviously. At the moment, we're doing very, very well, but as you said yourself, polls
you agree with that, don't you? Polls are very dangerous.
Polls are very volatile, of course they are, and a lot of this depends on who actually turns out to vote. So let's see where we go. Clearly, in terms of the future of the Conservative Party and the future of the Labour Party, what happens next Thursday is very, very important indeed. It is my hope and belief that we can win these elections, we can put WTO back on the table, we can get Brexit Party business people as part of the negotiating team, because I think that voice democratically...
Including you.
Should be there. I mean, if I'm too controversial, let's choose some of our business figures, but let's at least be there and be part of this. I think that's very, very important. After that, there is going to be a bellwether election that will take place, the significance of which will probably be as big as the European elections, and that's Peterborough, the by-election that takes place on the 6th of June, and that could be quite a big decisive moment.
You're going to stand as an MP, I read.
Well, I think it'll be my duty to do so.
Where?
I've no idea, Nick. I've no idea. Look,
would it be Kent?
I am fighting. I'm leading a brand new party into a national election next Thursday. I can't really. I'm struggling to think beyond that in Peterborough.
All right, let's go to another call. Will in Wimbledon. Go ahead, Will.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, Nigel.
Morning.
I think one of the things that's happened in the last 2 years is that we've learned that there's kind of a lot of forms of Brexit. And I think it's all well and good campaigning for the Brexit Party, but I think you do have a responsibility to outline what your Brexit plan would be. There's not a word about it on your website, and you have a manifesto. So could I just quickly ask a few questions about what type of deal you might want?
Okay,
Will, equally, there are lots of forms of Remain, including a European army, a United States of Europe, and everybody having the euro. So you can argue that both ways. But we issued our pledge
What is the
card.
Brexit?
We issued our pledge card. We did it a week and a half ago. We want to leave on WTO terms. We're not paying $39 billion. We're not having any jurisdiction from the European Court of Justice. And we're absolutely confident that once we've left on WTO terms, in the negotiations thereafter, we will come to a sensible, tariff-free deal with our friends in Europe.
Despite many businessmen and businesswomen saying a WTO deal would be the death knell for this country.
Well, and we had that argument during the referendum, didn't we? You know, I mean, we have debated these things.
Do you think people knew what the WTO was during the referendum? I think they're far more aware now than they were 3 years ago.
They may be, they may not be. I mean, it's always difficult to judge, how deeply people read into these things.
Why are all these businessmen and women wrong, Nigel Farage?
Well, because they're corporates. They're big corporates. They love the European Union.
Simply because they're corporates.
Of course, they love it. It's a great, lots of regulation. Put out of business all your small and medium-sized competitors. What's not to like from their point of view? The trouble is, we keep doing the economic argument. I think we'll be richer. You can argue with me, we'll be poorer. But the real point here is we were told our vote would be implemented. Our vote would be respected. It has not been. That, to me, is the key point here.
Last question, and a sentence, if you would. Is Britain more divided now as a result of the referendum 3 years ago than it was?
It is a difficult situation when so many establishment figures refuse to accept the result of a democratic election.
And are you responsible for that division with the work you did 3 years ago?
No, I want to unite the country. Let's leave and get on with the rest of our lives. And do you know something? I'll tell you where the majority really is. The majority is, let's end this, let's get out, let's move on.
Nigel Farage, you're founder and leader of the Brexit Party. Thank you for your time here on LBC. This phone is in as part of a series. You heard from Jacob Rees-Mogg from the Conservatives yesterday. Coming up, Sir Vince Cable after 9:30 and other main parties' leaders or senior members ahead of next Thursday's elections. This is LBC. It's 9:30. News with Thomas Watts.